We've got our employee edit form put together, but it's not actually being used anywhere just yet. Remember, whenever a user taps on an individual list item, so here's my list item component, we are still going to the employee create route. So we need to make sure that we change this over to the employee edit. So we're going to first add a new scene to represent employee edit, and then we will have access to the actions.employee edit route as well. So since we know that we're going to add the scene in, I'm going to just go ahead and change this one inside of list item right now. So I will go to employee edit whenever a user taps on an individual row. Now inside of my router.js, here it is right here. At the top, we will first import employee edit. So I will import employee edit from components employee edit. And then we can create a new scene with this. So I still want the scene to be in the same kind of bucket as the other employee routes in here. So inside of the main scene, we will add on a scene for employee edit. And it's going to show the employee edit component. Lastly, we'll give it a title on here. Because this is not only showing but also editing an employee, you could probably make a lot of different arguments for what this title should be. I think that edit employee makes a lot of sense. Remember, this title property right here is what's going to be shown on the nav bar at the top of the screen. All right, this looks good. I'm pretty confident this is going to work. We could do a quick test. If you want to pause the video and do a quick test, go for it. Otherwise, we're going to keep steaming ahead a little bit. So now you can navigate to this employee edit screen, but we still haven't resolved that very root issue inside of this form right now. Whenever you navigate to this form, we want to bootstrap or preload the reducer with the employee that is being passed to the form. And remember, an employee is being passed to it as a prop because when we change the route, we are explicitly passing in the employee that we're trying to modify. So inside of employee edit, this.props.employee is the employee that we're trying to modify. So we're going to use a little bit of a trick to load up our reducer with this employee. Here's what we're going to do. At the top, I'm going to import employee update from actions. Remember, employee update is the action creator that will modify our employee form reducer. This is what changes the state of that reducer. Then I'll scroll on down. We're going to add this as an action creator to the connect method down here. So I don't have a map state to props just yet. I'll put in a null and employee update. So now we've got access to that action creator within this component. Now here comes the fun part. I'm going to make a component will mount. And I'm going to say at any time that this component is about to be loaded onto the screen, so anytime this is about to be shown, I want to look at this.props.employee, and every single property that it has, I want to forward on to employee update. So I'm going to take all the properties out of my employee and stuff it into the reducer. To do so, we're going to be using Lodash as well. So at the top, we will import Lodash from Lodash. You might be wondering why we're going to use Lodash. Well, we're going to iterate over all the properties of the employee. So for each prop in this.props employee, and remember this is an object right here with the key value pairs of ID, name, phone, and shift. So now for each key value pair, we're going to take the value and key, which I'm going to refer to as prop in here, and we will call our action creator with these. So this.props.employee update, and I'll pass in an object with prop and value. So the end result here, what this is doing, I know this is a nasty little chunk of code right here. This says that we understand that there is an employee model coming into this component. We're going to iterate over every property on that object and update our reducer with every property. So this is taking all those attributes off the employee and stuffing them as pre-filled values inside of our form reducer. This is a little bit of a hackish way to do this. The other route that I might make, or the other approach, might be to create a new action creator to accept an entire employee model and then update all the values in the reducer just like in one go. So that would definitely be another approach that we might take as well. The last thing I want to do is at least start to hook up our button, at least enough that we can start to test our application. So the button, I'm going to give it a handler of onPress. We will run on button press, and I'll bind this to it. And then inside of on button press, I want to be able to console log the name, the phone, and the shift from this .props. So I'm going to console log name, phone, and shift. Now this last bit right here, this is probably, if you were following me before, this is probably where I really threw you off by console logging name, phone, and shift. This is intended to be the name, phone, and shift out of our form reducer. We have not yet pulled those properties into this component yet. So we're going to define a map state to props at the bottom. We'll take our state, oops, and from our form reducer, we're going to take our name, phone, and shift from the employee form piece of state, and then we will return name, phone, shift. And lastly, and I've been forgetting to do this so often, we need to plug in the map state to props, like so. Okay, so if this, I would imagine that this section seemed a little bit vague, a little bit obtuse. Let's continue. I want to test this in just a second, but I just want to take a moment to say that, yeah, this is a little bit of nasty code in here. This is some of the challenges that arise whenever we decide to have to deal with both the create and edit forms separately. So it's a little bit nasty, but we will do a nice big review to make sure that it's really clear where all these different props are coming from and where they're flowing to. So let's do one quick test inside of the simulator just to make sure we're going down the right path here. And it looks like I've got a typo somewhere in here. It's inside of employee edit. I probably just made it. Yep, looks like I got a little O in there somehow. My mistake. So I'll save. Bring the simulator back up. I will log in. Let's get that password. Now I should be able to click on any employee in this row right here in this list and see the correct values in the list. So yep, here's Amanda. Amanda has a phone of 555 and a shift day of Tuesday. I should be able to go back, see Jane instead. I should be able to see Nick. So Thursday 555. And now here's the really important part. If I change any value, so let's say that Nick is now going to have a phone number of 555-222, and then click on Save Changes, you'll see that I get the console log of all the attributes from my form reducer. So here's the new updated values. So what is very clear here is that we are correctly kind of pulling the values out of that employee that we're trying to load the form up with. They are getting saved onto the reducer. We know that that's occurring because we see the correct properties in the form itself. Then whenever I change the properties, we are updating them in the form reducer. I click the button and we see them console logged. What I want to make sure is really clear here is that we are not touching the underlying employee model that came from Firebase, the one that is being maintained by the employees reducer. And what is so critical about that, the reason it's so important, you just saw that I changed the phone number here, right? I changed it to the 222. Now if I go back and I go back into Nick, Nick is back at 555 as he was before. Because I did not save the record, nothing got persisted to Firebase. So very important item to note in here. All right, let's continue on to the next section. I think that our next step is going to be to create an action creator to save the changes that we are making to these employees. So let's tackle that in the next section.